Matt, we're now starting the record. Matt, over to you. You can introduce yourself in the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Derek. Just to let you know off the bat, I'm not going to present slides. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes, so you won't see the slides moving over the next period. As Derek says, I have the privilege of being the Chief Executive of the Health Research Authority. More importantly for this discussion today is, as Derek also said, I have the privilege of co-chairing something called the Make It Public campaign group, which is a wonderful group of organisations, individuals from across the sector, from across the research community, including public members, who are as passionate and committed to promoting research transparency as I'm sure all of you are, and it's absolutely because of them that we've been able to do the work we've been doing and put on not just this workshop but this entire week of activities. That said, I hope you'll forgive me for also passing on some very specific thanks to my team at the Health Research Authority, many of whom are on the call today to help the workshop go well. Anyone that's been involved in any of these sorts of activities before know that it's an enormous amount of work and effort to put on these kind of events, and so on behalf of the campaign for that Make It Public campaign group, I'd like to, and perhaps on behalf of all of you, to thank my team for all their work in putting this on today. So, what have I been asked to talk about? I've been asked to talk just a bit of an introduction about why today's topic, publishing summary results, and to a certain extent making the results of research publicly available in a more general way. And in a way, I don't need to say anything. We're a self-selected group of people that care about this and are passionate and committed to making a difference. And today's workshop is more about the how than the why. We get it, we know why it's important, but I think it probably is worth a few words to set out what I'm sure we all believe, so that then we can kind of think about how do we deliver that. And I started with a thought of, in general, what drives science. I think one of the other things we're all passionate about is the role that science, and particularly health-related science or health-related research, can make to people and to society. So what is it that makes it so special? What drives science? Is it, we might think it's ideas, it's that kind of spark of genius, or unfortunately maybe it's money, it's about funding, that's what drives science, or the impact factors of certain journals that science gets published in. But of course it's none of those. The currency of science is sharing knowledge, learning something new and sharing it with a wider community. And I always think, learning something new and not sharing is a bit like painting a beautiful painting that could be a masterpiece, but you lock it away in your basement for just your own enjoyment. But more than that, science only works if knowledge is shared. It's not the art of sudden transformational discoveries made by lone geniuses working in kind of labs late at night. That's not the way science works. It never has worked that way, funny enough. We have a different kind of view historically, but I don't believe it ever worked that way. It's actually the gradual accumulation of knowledge by communities. Now, in the past, communities probably meant academics working in ivory towers, but thankfully today that's not the case. Communities includes patients and the public, and it includes policy and decision makers in a much more interesting and vibrant space in which we can work together in order to bring about change, as long as we share knowledge, we share experience, we share expertise. Why is it important? Well, not sharing, we know, leads to wasteful research. It leads to unintentional duplication. It puts people at unnecessary harm through either getting involved in future studies, which we know we don't need to do, we don't need to duplicate or replicate. Or probably more importantly, it means that decisions about health and social care are made based on biased reviews of what we think works, what we know works. So when you look at the literature, you pick out far more positive studies, things that show things work, that actually is a true reflection of the state of science, and that ends up putting people at harm. But actually, probably more motivating for me to a certain extent is it's just frankly disrespectful. It's disrespectful to to people like us, the public, who make research and science possible, either through funding it one way or another. Most of the research in the UK is funded either commercially, we pay for that in the end when we pay for our kind of medicines and our healthcare, or it's funded by the public purse or by charities, which of course is another way of collecting and redistributing public funds. And finally, making the results of research studies public and easy to access as possible builds trust and accountability in research, which improves research both today and ensures that it's sustainable in the future. Excuse me. And so it's obvious to us, I think, all here today, that an important aspect of transparency and a central tenet of science is to make the results of that science, that research, publicly. And in fact, we all agree with that, I think, but I've met very few people in my career from any of the communities that wouldn't agree with that. I've met one or two, I have to admit, that would argue against it, but not many. Not many would disagree with that idea. And let me say this just once as well, so we don't have to keep repeating it today. This is all true. It's especially true of research that didn't end up showing the thing being tested, the new drug, the device, the approach to healthcare, whatever it might be. Didn't end up showing that it worked, that it was worth implemented. It is especially true of that type of research. And we know that that's especially where there's a big problem in terms of the numbers of studies which are published in that way. But it's not all gloomy. So since the launch of the Make It Public strategy in 2020, the transparency community, the research community, and I include all of you in that, have been working really hard to make transparency the norm, and more than ever, transparency, including publishing results and summary results, continues to be seen as a keystone of a thriving health and social care research environment in the UK. And more health and social care research is seen as the cornerstone of all the things we want to achieve as a society, whether that's better health or social care or a better economy through inward investment. And that's all down to a lot down to the works of people on the call today. So given how important all this is, it seems a strange feature of modern science that it seems so difficult to do it. In the Make It Public report that Derek talked about earlier, we see that only 45% of clinical trials that returned a final report to us have actually updated the registry with their summary results. And that's something which has been long expected of the community for many years. But there seems, even at that relatively simple act, compared to many things we have to do in science, seems stubbornly difficult to achieve. The reasons, I think, for that are the slightly balmy place we've got to with the incentives around science. The community is either incentivized to move quickly onto the next study, not quite right up the last one, or the whole system is stacked in favor of publishing only certain results, so results that show that the new thing worked, not publishing all results irrespective of their outcome. And it's worse than that, even, in that if you do have a so-called positive result, the thing that result has to be sexy, it has to be big, it has to be bold, it has to be newsworthy for it to be published. Not always. It's not impossible to publish other types of results, but all the time we're stacking the odds against a comprehensive publication of results. And we're going to hear about some really interesting different approaches to publication today, which I think is already helping that. Now, all of those changes, they're big system changes, and even this group of people, amazing though you are, they're beyond us to resolve this afternoon. But that doesn't mean to say we can't do anything. We don't have to wait for the whole system to change in order to make a difference, nor have we been waiting, which is why we've achieved the things we have already. So, for example, yesterday, the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency, the MHRA, a very close partner of the Health Research Authority ourselves and many others that are involved in the campaign for Make It Public, published the government's response to a public consultation that both the MHRA and ourselves supported on new clinical trials legislation. And now that's needed partly for practical purposes. We need something to replace existing EU law, But mostly it was about establishing the right regulatory environment that we want as a nation going forward, where health-related research is so important to what we want to achieve as a nation. And it is a great win for all of us within, and all of you within the transparency community, because in that legislation, it will be a legal requirement to register clinical trials in a publicly available registry, and that would need to be a WHO, World Health Organization accredited registry. In the UK, we have something called ISRCTN. It's the only acronym you're ever allowed to use, because it really means nothing other than ISRCTN, but it's a public registry of clinical trials. That it will be a legal requirement to publish summary findings within 12 months at the end of the trial, so really relevant to our work today. And it will be a legal requirement to feed feedback to participants in a timely manner and in suitable formats. Without giving too much away on what goes on behind the scenes in these delicate negotiations, I don't mind telling you that it's a win to get those things into the legislation. And so, huge congratulations who've been raising that as an important thing for us to be thinking about for many years. And now we have the opportunity to have continue to have a legislative framework which supports that. So we have a legal framework which we'll develop guidance against, and we have many systems to support us in order to make publishing summary results and final reports easy, the norm and expected. But that's not where our conversation is going to end today either, I don't think. There are two critical additional challenges I think we're going to cover, which are really important. The first is most of the existing support applies to clinical trials. And certainly at the Health Research Authority and within Make It Public, we think that these principles and practices should apply to all research. It is much harder when you move away from clinical trials because there isn't the infrastructure, there isn't the legislative framework, there isn't the systems in order to do that. But we think it should happen. And perhaps even more challenging than that, there's a real danger that we slip into ticking the box on this. We update the registry, we publish, the paper, whatever it might be, and that's relatively easy to do, sort of from a mechanistic perspective. The real challenge is doing it in open, accessible, and understandable ways in which the entire community, whether that's academics, patients, public, policy or decision makers, health and care providers, in order that all of us within that community can continue to exchange the currency of science, and that's the knowledge of what we learn through doing research. I'll leave it there and say thank you, and really looking forward to the discussions we're going to have this afternoon. Back to you, Derek.
Helpful overview. There was one question in the chat which says CTIMs have been the requirement to publish results since 2004, yet many don't. Moving forward, what will be done to ensure that there is enforcement of this legal requirement? I'm sure this will come up tomorrow and on Friday. Did you want to just comment on it now?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a really, really good point, which is part of the reason why it's going to be so much harder when we move away from regulated research, such as medicines, CTIMs being clinical trials of investigational medicinal products. So what we're doing, so the whole approach of the Make It Public strategy is to tier our response as a system. The first is we make it possible for people to do it, and that is, it is possible to do it for clinical trials of medicines, but there are some barriers, and we'll talk about a lot of those, I think, around the kind of the way in which the publication sector is stacked in favor of certain types of results and against other types of results. But the first thing is to make it possible. The second is to make it easy. And one of the things that we're really interested in doing from a Health Research Authority, working with partners like ISRCTM, is to automate the process as much as possible. So if we ask for the information once, we make sure we reuse that throughout the system, so that we've got a single source of truth and we lower the burden for doing it. And I'm sure we'll be having lots of conversation about how do we do that. We're doing that at the moment for the registration of trials. So since January, we've been automatically registering CTIMs with our partners at ISR CTM. And we think we can do that with to a certain extent with other aspects, potentially also results as well. Finally, once you've made it easy, you've made it we made it possible, you've made it easy, you make it expected, and that's part of these kind of conversations in the campaign, to make sure that it's understood that there really isn't any way that you shouldn't be doing this. The final stage is to make it mandatory. And we are having another conversation around what would that look like? What are the kind of the levers, the sticks, the sanctions, for want of a better term, and we don't think it's a very good term, but for want of a better term, could we apply to those that after all of that, it still does not happen? And so I think we would approach it in all those ways. And I'd love to hear more ideas about that this afternoon.
I think there's lots of patients would say the time is coming for that to happen. But let's see how the debate goes. So, Matt, thanks for answering that. I'm going to move on to the panel now. So we've got a chance for attendees to hear directly from people who are doing some of this transparency and feeding back information. So first of all, delighted to have Patricia Ologolu and Michael May Slussel from the Equator Network, and they'll explain what that is. But they've only got 5 minutes. So over to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Derek. Very nice to see you again. We're working together in another project. I'm Patricia Ologolu, and I have with me today Michael Slussel. Say hi, Michael. Okay, so we are part of the Equator Network. And what is the Equator Network? The Equator is an international organization, but it's not exactly an organization. It's more of a group of researchers that spreads all over the world. We aim to enhance the quality and transparency of health research. This is what our name stands for, okay, the big acronym Equator. Our 5 centers in Australia, Canada, China, France, and the UK, where it was born, work together towards our goals by developing and promoting reporting guidance for writing, for investigating research quality and transparency, and providing training. So we work in these 3 ways. We work with reporting guidelines, we do meta research, research on research, and we train people, right? So reporting guidelines. Reporting guidelines are our main focus. These are tools that help researchers to write anything they researched in health research, in journal articles or in other manuscripts. Complete reporting is a vital step in open research, because if researchers share their data, their code, summary results, etc., but they don't include a clear, complete description of how they collected this data and analyzed it, the whole story, the readers won't be able to understand and use those bits of information and those bits of research they did. So it's not only about sharing, but it's about telling the story, a complete story and an accurate story. Reporting guidelines are writing tools. They are checklists that every researcher can use when they are starting to write their manuscripts for a journal or any other. Equator raises awareness about reporting guidelines through our website. So they're all collected there and you can search. And in other online resources, for example, Good Reports and social media. Then I told you we do 3 things. So the second thing we do is meta research. We also investigate how other researchers in health are reporting their studies, right? We're interested in and we are investigating open research science principles and procedures, how people are using them, how people view them, and mainly how complete the reports are. how you can get everything you want or you can't through the manuscripts. From research, we've seen a general push towards open science practices from funders, from researchers, from journals, now from HRA. We've also seen a rise in preprints and in the registration of non-trial research on platforms like OSF and many others. Journals have started asking authors to explain how they are going to share data, share their code, share every bit of research. And if they don't, why not? But many data sharing statements ask readers to email authors. So email us to get our data with no further guidance. So there is still work to be done here. We need to help authors to share their research materials with enough background information to explain what it is not, so that all the things can be used. This is where training can help. So as I said, third thing, we teach people. In some of our centers, we have regular training programs, teaching early career researchers and students what needs to be reported and how, what needs to be shared and how, and general open science principles. We embed research integrity principles in all our training, all our courses, workshops, etc. In the UK Equator Centre, for example, we train researchers the whole year, both online and now also back in person with our publication school next month. Our lightning workshops during lunch and many other small sessions. From them, we learn what are the difficulties and obstacles in good reporting. We learn from our students and we change our teaching based on that. For example, we learn from them what are the difficulties they have in sharing data, in sharing code, in sharing their manuscripts. And then we adjust and adapt our courses to their needs. So this is Equator, this is what we do. We promote reporting guidelines. We are very concerned about complete reporting. We want to see everything in the manuscripts. We research about this and we train people. This is how we are trying to contribute with this. Am I right, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. This is pretty much a very comprehensive summary of what we do in terms of promotion of reporting guidelines, research, and educational initiatives as well.
You're on mute, Derek.
Apologies. So thank you very much, Patricia and Michael. I've just put a link in the chat to the Equator Network so that people can find out a little bit more. I'm now going to move us on to Rebecca Lawrence from the F1000, who are publishers of open access materials. Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you very much, Derek, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this important discussion. So yes, F1000, just very brief background to who we are. We are open research publishers. We've been going about 10 years now, and really our mission is about trying to bring transparency more broadly to publishing. Started out very much in life and health and medical sciences, expanded more broadly, and we're also part of Taylor & Francis now, which is obviously one of the major global scholarly publishing companies. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, I wanted to just talk initially about transparency and the role that I think transparency has. We've just heard a very good summary really from both the previous speakers about some of the fundamental aspects behind this, but yeah, it's critical that we make research as visible as possible for as broad as community as we can. And also, I think it's really critical that we do this to ensure trust in the research, because One of the things that we include in the way that we publish on F1000 is about ensuring we have transparency across the whole process. And so it's not maybe just about making sure that the findings themselves are transparent, but also the discussion and the review by experts is transparent. So you can really understand who has looked at this, what they said about it, and how much you really can trust that piece of research. And I think in this day and age, it's becoming increasingly important that we have that element of transparency to support our assessment around this. Also around maximising the potential impact for fundamentally for patients and for public at large is critical, and transparency plays a really important role in that. Now, obviously, publishers can enable this in a number of different ways. One is around sharing all research outputs, and so, as was touched on already, the importance of sharing not just the high impact positive findings, but also the negative, the null, the incremental findings, and making sure that we get a balanced view to the outcomes of research, but also making sure that we reduce significantly research waste, because we don't communicate those findings publicly, then, as was pointed out, there's not a lot of point in doing that piece of research in the first place. So that's the first piece. The second, as we've just touched on, is around making sure that the research data that underpin the findings, whilst obviously making sure that there's adequate protection from where we've got confidential data. Really important that those data are shared. We actually have a mandatory policy really around sharing of data and making sure that is that we work very closely with researchers to support them and how to share the data, to make sure you can really understand what's been done. It really supports reproducibility and use and reuse. And we also make sure that researchers do adhere to those requirements, such as those developed by the Equator Network, but indeed others as well, is really critical. We enable article versioning, which supports rapid updates to data and findings and reduces a lot of the delays that you often get, where you've done an extra piece of work, got a new bit of data. The systematic reviews, often a new trial comes out, is not in the systematic review. You may have to wait years for the next systematic review. Here, if you use version, you can actually update as you go along and really get much more up-to-date information. Also critical, I think, that we properly recognise public and patient contributions, and this can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, from thinking about what the research is being done in the first place, to contributing to the research itself, to also contributing to the assessment and the review at the end. And certainly, BMJ and many other publishers have really led the way in looking at patient review and public review as part of this. And then more generally, making research results all shapes and sizes more readily available. And we work with a number of partners, the NIHR, the Association of Medical Research Charities, European Commission, Wellcome, Gates, many others, to enable this way of sort of approaching the sharing of research. The diagram on the next slide actually just talks a little bit about thinking about the whole research life cycle, because we often think we do a piece of research and then at the end, that's when we share the study and the results more publicly. But actually, it's really important to recognise, I think, that throughout the whole research life cycle, there's all sorts of different outputs that we're producing and that could be shared much earlier in the process. Enables us to get early sight on findings, enables us to get feedback from the community on those findings, particularly around methods and study protocols, that get feedback before we do the study on whether this is the right approach, rather than only getting it at the end. And as you can see around that whole life cycle, all sorts of different types of outputs that are really important to share. And I know more and more publishers are enabling and encouraging a broader range of article types to, and even templates in places to really support and make it easy for researchers to share things as they go along. The last point I just want to make on the next slide is around making results more accessible to everybody. And there's a real push around plain language summaries. I know the open pharma community have been really encouraging adoption of this. The NIHR, the site I've got on here is the NIHR evidence site, which we also work with, and I note some of the writers NIHR evidence, I think, on the call today. But I think it's really critical that we think about how to get research out there in a much more accessible way. And I think the various questions I put on here that I think we need to think about around, whether we need to think about different types of users and different types of summaries we need for different users and different angles, whether it's for patients or whether it's for commissioners or clinicians or other researchers, very different angles, I think, probably needed there. Do we focus on doing plain language summaries for everything, every piece of research, or do we do it just for selected research findings? Authors generally are not great at writing these plain language summaries. They're actually quite difficult to write well. So I think there's a question there for us to think about, whether we prioritize some or do all. Do we focus on single studies? Do we focus on research themes and topics? Again, the NIH evidence sites certainly do a breadth of those. And also including different perspectives. And you see, hopefully down the right-hand side, there's actually a really interesting comment section that's included in this site's summaries, which brings those different angles and different perspectives that I think is really important to this. I've talked about what NIH are doing, but actually, as I say, AMRC, the Social Medical Research Charities, are looking at this. We work with the European Commission on Open Research Europe, and they're looking at really encouraging plain language summaries. And Taylor and Francis more broadly, actually, even looking at separate titles, publication titles, all about plain language summaries. I think this is a really important area for us to focus on.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
That's excellent. Rebecca, there's a question from Andrew Freeman and from Amanda Wellings in the chat. You might want to answer those publicly there or privately, as I'm going to move us on to the next speaker, and we'll see if we've got time for questions at the end of this, although it'll be quite tight. It's over to Claire Verriard from ISRCTN. I should declare an interest here. I'm a non-executive director, so I'm going to pass on to you, Claire, and good luck.
Thanks, Derek. And hello to everyone. Thanks to the organisers for giving me an opportunity to give some background on the ISRCTN registry and what's going on with summary results there. So the ISRCTN registry can accept any study with human participants or populations that measures human health or wellbeing outcomes. So can I have the next slide, please? So outputs of studies can be found in the outputs table, and this is towards the bottom of the study record. And if you click on the links, the output links on the left, you can link to or download the output. So there's actually two types of study summary results in the registry. So what we call basic results are a scientific summary of the results, and I'll come back to those later. But we also have plain English results, and these are what's also known as lay summaries of results and many other names. So these are aimed at the public and need to be carefully written so they're not misleading. So next slide, please. And that will show us if what you would see if you clicked on the plain English results link from the outputs table in the previous slide. So this is just the title in the first paragraph. So these Cancer Research UK results summaries are really great. They're written by cancer experts and they're based on the published results. They also coordinate with the study sponsors to create these summaries. So next slide, please. So you can also link or upload other types of plain English results to an ISRCTN study record. And that includes graphics, videos, and lay summaries of results on the HRA website. Maybe there's some other sources or formats that you know about, so please let us know if you know of any good ones. Next slide, please. So going back to the basic results, as a WHO primary registry, the ISRCTN registry must follow the WHO standards. These expect the summary results of clinical trials to be added to the registry record within 12 months of the trial completion date. So that's the same as what the MHRA is going to go for. So the list of items required as summary results currently include these items on the slide, but we don't think it makes sense to wait until the study has been completed for a year before things like the protocol can be added. Some of the other things like the date of the first journal publication of results, you might not have that yet. So, so you wouldn't be able to add it along with the results summary potentially. So what we do is we allow this information to be added separately to the ISRCTN record at any point in time. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the 4 items from the list that are the actual results. So these can't really be added until the study's completed. So what we do is we only ask for these items to make up a basic results file that gets uploaded to the registry. Next slide, please. This just shows really the items on the items in the basic results summary and their format. So the participant flow is provided as a flow diagram, and the other items are tables. And currently we're uploading these as a PDF. But the problem with that is that it's not. It means the data is not that easy to reuse by, for example, for systematic reviewers. Next slide, please. So again, as with the plain English results, the ISRCTN record can link to other types of basic results, such as the structured basic results on clinicaltrials.gov and UDRCT. And we can also link to basic results on a funder or sponsor website or a regulator website as well. So what I've outlined, next slide, please. What I've outlined here is the current situation, but there is change on the way because the WHO is consulting on, or has consulted on, summary results at the end of last year. The consultation only asked which information should be required, so they haven't consulted yet on kind of the logistics. Next slide, please. And the reason why they're doing this is because obviously the WHO wants all studies to be reported and reported reasonably soon after the trial has been completed. It also makes sense to have have them in a standard format that can be easily reused. Another thing is to enable researchers to make the results available without having to pay anything and without being subject to publishers' selection criteria. In addition, summary results are kind of uninterpreted, and so they should be free of spin. So, that all makes sense, and I expect, again, people would agree with all of that. But the problem is at the moment, is that very few studies registered in ISRCTN actually have summary results, although we have a lot of, we have a high proportion of published results added. So I'm really excited to be invited to this workshop because I'm really interested to find out why this is and what might encourage more summary results to be added. My colleague Lisa Hodgkinson is also here, so we're hoping to gain insights from you during the workshop session. So please contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That's just perfect timing as well. We're not going to get time to have a panel discussion. Could I just say thank you to everybody for speaking today? Also, could you say that Chief Scientist Office Scotland and Abby V have contributed to the annual report, along with some of the speakers we've had. So thank you very much. Do take your questions into the chat later or into the breakout rooms. Matt, Will, am I passing over to you this stage?
Oh, yes, thank you, Terence. So we're about to just go out into the breakout discussions there. So as you'll have all been kind of sent with some of the pre-reads, there are objectives for this workshop about working together to produce a set of top tips. You've all submitted some initial thoughts and ideas and priorities as part of your registration. So thank you for doing that. And you'll have seen on the screen and in your briefing packs, and as will be made clear when you get into the breakout groups, we will show you all the list of the kind of initial list of about 8 to 10 priority areas that we've kind of summarized. And we'd like your groups to kind of discuss it and go into a bit more detail, but I'm going to leave it up to your group facilitators to explain the whole process. I'm going to send you off into your breakout groups now, and your facilitators will make themselves known, and they'll go through this feedback and they'll go through the whole process in a bit more detail. We're going to have a breakout discussion initially and then come back for a short break, and then we'll go back out into our breakout groups again for further discussion. So I will send you into groups now, and you should all receive a little pop-up. If you get that, please click it and you'll be sent off just by magic to your room. So here we go. Okay, so Jonathan, just want to check in. Oh, there we go. That's everyone. That other one's me, so that's fine.
Fab, that was good with timing.
Hi, Stacey. Oh. Stacey, have you been asked to join one of the breakout rooms? I'll just see where you're meant to be. Oh, there. Oh.
Room 1. Ah, Stacey's just popped a message in the chat.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, tech issues.
Issues.
No worries. There we go. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's fine.
So I'll do the message at 2:55 on broadcast to all rooms, and then are you going to do one on the Teams group with them as well?
Yeah. So we'll just do them at the same time. So yeah, we've had a slight drop off, which is a bit annoying. Not as bad as yesterday though. So we have the group that Nick's got. It's kind of like payback really. The group that Nick had, which had 4 people in. I'm gonna stop. Okay, so Derek, if I could hand back to you for the next bit, please. You're on mute, Derek, sorry.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you to all the facilitators and those who are making notes. That was a great session today. I've got to say I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I think having more people there made it work better. So thank you to everybody who contributed in those sessions. Again, great to hear people's views and their reasoning beforehand. As I think the facilitators possibly said in their groups, this will be collated. You wouldn't have that recordings made public, but they'll collate some notes and make up some guidance or top tips to researchers. So I think I had a little note saying that possibly Nick or Gemma might like to feedback this point. So I'm not picking on you, but if you do want to speak, now is your time to go. Nothing? Oh. Nothing from either. So does anybody have any comments they want to make about the contributions that were made? Anything said? Or do you still have a question that you would like to ask of us? And can somebody just highlight if anybody's got their hand up?
I would like to know what are the next steps. What's the one little thing we are going to do?
So, Matt or Will, do you want to answer that?
I can do. Happy to. Sorry, I'm just going to quickly turn this off. Yes, so in terms of next steps, what we plan to do is to, as Derek briefly touched on, is we want to take all the feedback on those kind of that discussion that you've had there about prioritizing, about kind of merging related themes together, kind of distilling those down in some form. We're going to take the discussion from each of the breakout groups, take the recordings, basically collate and merge those together and produce kind of as shorter pages with kind of 1 page or a 2-pager. It's basically some top tips, some recommendations, some ideas about how researchers, those active in research where this would apply, could basically kind of improve practice, try some new ways basically to improve best practice. That format, that kind of approach is something we're taking across all 3 workshops. So at the end of Make It Public Week, we should have, or in the coming weeks beyond Make It Public Week, we should have 3 kind of distinct sets of kind of guidance or priorities or top tips. They will be shared with attendees, and they are for you to share, for you to use, for you to recommend as you say fit, as a resource that you've contributed to, that have been kind of collectively contributed to by the research community and the sector as a whole, because there's such a broad range of people on this call. We'll make them available on our website. We'll kind of work them out so they look nice. It's not just your standard Word document, it looks quite nice. So yeah, they'll be available as kind of an asset or resource to use. And then when we next come and do the next Make It Public Week, I'm not giving myself too much work a year in advance, but when we come back to it, we will sort of probably touch base on some of that work and see where we've got to in the year ahead. So that's kind of how we want to take the work from Make It Public and move it forward. But I just hand over to Matt.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was scrabbling around for my unmute button and I finally found it. The thing I'd add to that is something that came up in our discussion was, it's just come up in the chat again, is that this is all about top tips, advice for researchers or sponsors, the people that have actually got to sort of press the button and publish those summary findings or upload them to the trial registry. In our discussion, we came up with a few things. Well, but what should HRA do? What should a funder do? What might the publishers do? And actually, one of the things I think we should do, Will, Derek, if it's okay, is take that back to the campaign group and say, is there something else we need to start thinking about guidance or advice for other parts of the system that either need to help the research community and sponsors do this, or indeed ensure that they do what we expect them to do. So check that they've done it in the end. And that's a different conversation than we ever intended to have today. But I thought it was a really important point that some of this is not just within the gift or the responsibility of a researcher or a research sponsor. It's other parts of the system. We need to consider that.
Matt, you want to just say a little bit about why it's a campaign, not a project plan? Because I think that thinking behind it is helpful, because this is very much about consensus building. But do you want to say more?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good, it's a really good point. So we've very explicitly not turned this into the Make It Public strategy implementation kind of project or anything like that. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is in many of these areas, there's, sometimes you just don't know what to do. You couldn't plan it as a project with kind of clear milestones and deliverables and all those sort of things. But perhaps more important is that this is about creating or supporting what already existed, which is a community of people from across kind of academia, patient and public, policymakers, industry, charities, whoever it might be, all different parts of the system, where if we all work towards a common goal, However we did that, that's up to us. But if we all work towards a common goal, we could achieve something so much bigger than we could ever do if one of us had a project or a program to deliver a bunch of activities. No matter how wonderful Will and colleagues are, there's only so much that any one organization can do. And what you really want to do is get that kind of multiplying effect. And of course, we start with a small group, the group gets bigger, but before you know, the entire community is delivering these shared goals. We didn't invent that. Transparency, many on the call have been working around transparency for many years and have created that. All we've been trying to do is through the Make It Public campaign group is provide a little bit more support to help that get to the next stage of delivering it. So that's why we've always seen this as a campaign. This is about taking a shared goal and moving it forward, however we want to do that.
And also I would just add to that not one player in the whole system could do this on their own.
No.
This has to be all the different parts coming together and sometimes trying something and maybe going back. And the HRA has to be praised, I think, for the way in which they've done this in such a facilitative manner, and even being brave enough to bring mad people like me in to co-chair this. So I'm just going to quickly go back. I don't see anybody else's hands up.
Just Naho, sorry, Derek. Naho's got a hand up.
Right, Naho. So over to you, then
Hi.
I'll wrap up.
Thank you, Derek. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Naho Yamazaki. I'm also from the Health Research Authority. One of the things that came up in our group, and this is really interesting in terms of this shared endeavour, was about the importance of public involvement in the publication process and in terms of accessibility, and the shared commitment that we had convening with the NIHR was mentioned, and how that is another route. And I think that the big overlap between promoting transparency and really making sure that that's embedded across the system, and the importance of public involvement in that. And for both of those, there's cross-sector working and thinking about how we promote each other's work and support each other in reaching that goal really came through. So that's just something else I wanted to highlight.
Yeah. No, that's great, Naho. Thank you. So there's more of this tomorrow. I'll only be along for a little time because I'm doing another Zoom call later on. But thank you so much to everybody. This is just so exciting, so good, and so positive. Just the idea that within these next few years, people are just going to get those results. They're going to be shared. And it's because of your commitment to this. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing two people tomorrow.
Brilliant. Thanks, Derek.
Cheers, Matt.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.